Right, good afternoon. I'm Andrea Cullen. I'm a lecturer at the University of Bradford, a lecturer in computer science. But I'm also an ISO 27001 lead implementer. I can hear you all yawn at that one. And also an ISO 27001 trainer. So we work quite a lot with industry, implementing ISMSs within organisations, and we get a chance to gather information and case studies, which has been particularly important for this type of research. I did this research together with a colleague of mine, Lana, who's sitting over there. Wave. Hello. So we're just going to talk you through some ideas around social engineering and a model that we've developed. Just an overview, there are two main types of social engineering attacks. There are targeted attacks and target of opportunity attacks. A targeted attack is something where an individual is particularly identified. A target of opportunity attack is something more like a phishing email that's sent large and wide, and let's see who picks it up. We've identified lots of vulnerabilities and existing countermeasures, but our thoughts are that these only generally come into play when the attacks happened. There's either the upfront training with organisation individuals, or there's a kind of an idea that an attack's taken place. So we want to kind of revisit that concept as well. We developed the attack by examining a number of attack scenarios. We have the delightful opportunity of going into organisations, of developing social engineering attacks and doing some penetration testing. So with that we get some interesting data, and we can see how some vulnerabilities are echoed through a number of different types of organisation. And just kind of by way of a question, or just by way of an identification of perhaps the best weapon a social engineer can ever have. Don't know if anybody's ever thought about this, but the best weapon a social engineer can have is kind of to be female. Already you look trustworthy and you don't look like the sort of person who would do that sort of thing. So being two females doing this kind of work is kind of particularly advantageous for us. We're going to look at some relevant countermeasures and kind of talk about some future work. So, within the kind of targeted and target of opportunity attacks, there are two main types of social engineering attack within that really, the computer-based deception and human interaction-based deception. And social engineering attacks tend to be a bit of a combination of both those two things. There's some identification in brief really here about the different attack types. If we're looking at kind of computer-based attacks, we're talking about things like fake pop-ups and phishing as a generalised attack, or spear phishing if we're looking at a targeted attack. Some human-based types of attack, impersonation, persuasion. These can be quite complex attacks, and everybody thinks there are particularly people in this environment who understand security and the concept of keeping their information confidential, like to think they would not be hacked in this way. But I'll tell you now, everybody's got a vulnerability, everybody's got a place you can go to get the information you want. So as much as I'm interested in technology, it's the people side of it that I think is the real vulnerability in the process. So people are vulnerable, they're unpredictable, and they iterate through decisions. If I was to ask you now a question just before lunch, you'd probably give me a different answer to a question at 9 o'clock in the morning or when you're ready to go home. So we can depend on lots of different situations. We're unpredictable. One day we think one thing, the next day we think something else. So trying to develop countermeasures for this type of attack is very, very difficult. We also go through decisions in stages, so they can become quite complex. And it's getting the right person at the right time. When we looked at current countermeasures, there tends to be a lot of focus on preventative countermeasures. So how can you train people not to be social engineered? How can you develop physical security and technical controls to stop really putting your reliance on the person? How can we develop policy? Just kind of a note here is, when neither of us are psychologists, although Lauren has more of an interest in this than I do, I'm kind of all about the process and what the process looks like. So how do you raise awareness, and how do you develop and educate people? And also there's talk about defence in depth. How do you put a number of layers of defence in to stop somebody becoming socially engineered? Within that really, corrective countermeasures, people don't look at those.